26-year-old Senegalese homeowner Amadou Sow woke up to screams coming from the smoke detectors. Within moments, the flames were consuming his home before his eyes. He then rushed to his bedroom door, but the heat and thickness of the smoke forced him right back. In a panic, he ran to the window, broke the screen with his hands, and jumped out. The 2-story drop fractured his left foot. Still left inside were his wife Hawa and their 10-year-old daughter who shared their room. Horrified, she dragged herself and her daughter to the window and pushed her out. Amadou tried to catch her, but unfortunately missed. Miraculously, she landed on her hands and feet, uninjured. Then it was Hawa's turn. When she leaped, she unfortunately landed on her back, fracturing her spine in 2 places. Immediately, their attention turned to their 22-year-old son, Umar. Amadou threw a rock at his window and got worried before noticing that Umar's car wasn't in the driveway. It clicked to them that he must have been working his night shift at the nearby 7-Eleven. Amadou had bought the 4-bedroom property in 2018 when the neighborhood was newly built and not too populated. For him, a Senegalese immigrant who worked night shifts at Walmart, the home was a refuge. Not long after his family moved into the place, his old friend, 29-year-old Jibril Diol, and his family joined them. The first fire truck arrived at 2:47 a.m., but by then, the fire had already shattered all the windows and plunged the air with smoke. When firefighters put out the flame enough to get into the front door, they encountered the small body of a child, Jibril's almost 2-year-old daughter, Khadija. A short distance after, there were the bodies of Jibril and his 23-year-old wife, Aja. Next to his wife was his sister, 25-year-old Hassan. She was only living in the house for 3 months. In her arms was her 7-month-old daughter, Hawa. Medical examiners later concluded that all 5 died of smoke inhalation. The homeowner who escaped heard Jibril yelling to direct people out of the house, but they were sadly taken over by the smoke. Their airways were coated in black soot, with their internal organs and muscles cherry red from the heat. At first, the officers assumed the fire started from faulty wiring or some other type of residential error. But things quickly took a dark turn when a neighbor approached the officers telling them, "I have something you should see." He showed the officer footage from his security cameras that had a timestamp of 2:26 a.m., revealing 3 figures in hoodies and masks walking towards the side of the house. After 12 minutes passed by, the 3 ran back towards the street. The fire consumed the entire house within 2 minutes. Officers soon realized that they had a bigger, more intentional arson case in their hands. The investigation dragged on for months without any other leads. Aside from the footage, the police knew the home was not picked at random, as it was tucked in next to plenty of similar houses on a street in a dense subdivision. Senegalese immigrants in the community began installing security cameras at their homes in fear that the fire was a hate crime. For a while, the son of the home's owner, who was working the overnight shift at 7-Eleven, became the only likely suspect to them. But finally, a breakthrough came when investigators obtained a search warrant requiring Google to provide them information on all users who had searched for variations of the home's address, 5312 Truckee Street, in the last 15 days before the fire. 5 of the searches were in Colorado, and police obtained the names of them through another search warrant, which eventually led them in identifying the 3 culprits caught on camera: 16-year-old Kevin Bowie, 15-year-old Gavin Seymour, and 14-year-old Dylan Siebert. 16-year-old Kevin Bowie was born to parents who immigrated from Vietnam prior to his birth. The family struggled financially in his childhood, but once he was in high school, his father's accounting business started to take off. They moved into a more luxurious house on the outskirts of Denver with mountain views. He was one that disliked school, but was somehow good at it, while also on the football team and a swimmer. He was close to his sister Tanya, who was 7 years older than him, but together they would deal hard drugs like fentanyl and marijuana through Snapchat. Just 3 weeks before the fire, Kevin arranged to meet some guys that promised to sell him a gun as he felt that he needed a weapon for his lifestyle. And he was met by these guys, but instead of selling him a gun, they robbed him of his cash, shoes, and iPhone. He returned back home on foot, broke, phoneless, angry, and humiliated. Soon after, he pulled up the Find My Device feature on his iPad and watched as it pinged his phone. The map kept moving and moving, but eventually it stopped at a location, 5312 Truckee Street. The next afternoon, he sent a message to his friend Gavin through Snapchat writing, "I deserve that shit, 'cause I knew it would happen and still went. They gon' get theirs like I got mine." Gavin wrote back to him, "IDK why I would let you go alone. I'm sorry for that." Kevin told him, "I can't even be mad 'cause we used to do the same shit to random." In the next week, Kevin searched this address 13 times, including its listing on Zillow that detailed its interior layout. Soon he persuaded his friends, Gavin Seymour and Dylan Siebert, to help him on his revenge plot. In late July, the two friends also searched the address multiple times. 3 nights passed by. Dylan and Kevin went to Party City to buy black theater masks and ate at a nearby Wendy's. They soon met up with Gavin, and around 1 a.m. they drove to a gas station in Kevin's car to fill a red fuel canister to the brim. Then they headed 30 minutes down to the address. When they arrived, they found the house's back door unlocked. One of them doused the gas on the living room walls and floors and set the flame. Once it started to catch on fire, all 3 stumbled to Kevin's car and drove off. When the news broke the next morning after the fire, Kevin quickly realized that he made a terrible mistake. That the faces of the lives lost were not the guys who robbed him. Instead, he killed families. However, that same morning, Kevin and Gavin went on a camping trip. A few months after that, they both went on a family vacation to Cancun. But not too far after, the boys were officially arrested on January 27th, 2021. Gavin and Dylan refused to speak with officers, but Kevin was willing and eventually confessed to his crimes. "29-year-old Jabril was a 6'8" civil engineer who was working on a large rebuilding of Interstate 70 in Denver. He was well loved for all of his support with helping fellow immigrants in the community. Nicknamed Jibby, Colorado State University, where he once graduated from, created a civil engineering scholarship in his name to honor his life and passion in the field. Those who went to school with him recalled the nights and weekends where he would stay in and study, looking forward to the day he could bring his wife and daughter with him to the U.S. He hoped to use his engineering knowledge to improve the infrastructure back home in rural Senegal after gaining some professional experience in the U.S. His wife, 23-year-old Edja, and her sister-in-law, 25-year-old Hassan, both worked opposite shifts at Amazon so they could care for each other's children and continue to send support to their families in Senegal. They had dreams of going to nursing school. At the time of the fire, Hassan's husband, Amadou Beye, was in Senegal waiting to receive his visa to rejoin his wife and meet their child born in the U.S. Hassan would call her husband several times a day. Amadou expressed that he has since moved to America after the fire and tries to avoid being alone when he's not working to avoid remembering his loss. He wears a pendant with God's name on it as a reminder not to hurt himself. At their sentencing hearings, Hamadi Diol, the father of the siblings Jabril and Hassan, spoke during the sentencing and said how he now needs medication to sleep after losing 5 members of his family, stating, "I'm a dead person that's not buried yet." Hassan's husband Amadou called Kevin a big terrorist who did not deserve to eat, sleep, or talk to his family while in prison. He told him, "We can't be normal because of you." He also said, "I will never forget or forgive you for what you did to me. You took me away from my wife, the most beautiful thing I had. You took me away from my baby that I will never have a chance to see."
They didn't kill just 5 people. They killed an entire community. They killed me. I wish he will die soon, and I wish he will die hard, and after he will go straight to hell. And that's what I wish for all of them.
Kevin appeared not to show any reaction to Amadou or others during the hearing. When he was able to speak, Kevin said he was an ignorant knucklehead blinded by rage and a failure who threw his life away, and he couldn't fathom what it would be like to have family members ripped from you, and recited the names of all of the victims. However, he pushed back on the idea that he was a monster or a terrorist, and instead said, "My heart beats the same as yours. I have no excuses and nobody to blame but myself." One of Kevin's lawyers told the judge that his involvement with the fire was uncharacteristic of him, and that he actually was a polite and respectful young man who was raised by hard-working Vietnamese immigrants. They also noted that Kevin did not set the fire, and instead placed blame on the youngest of the 3 charged. However, the police refuted that, as they knew Kevin confessed to starting it himself and was even burned in the process. Additionally, Kevin's sister Tanya's enterprise was accidentally discovered shortly after the fires when police searched their family's home as a part of the investigation. Chief Deputy District Attorney Courtney emphasized the vindictiveness and revengeful nature of Kevin's plan, and that it was not just about getting his phone back. He seemed to know what consequences would bear of his actions when he sent one of his friends a message a few days before the fires, talking about possibly ruining their futures by burning the house down. After he was arrested, he only regretted that he had targeted the wrong people and killed immigrants like his own relatives, and not that he had set the fire. She said he was trying to exact revenge on the person he thought took his phone, and he didn't care who else it took down. Courtney also said the crime has rippled a hole in the city's Senegalese immigrant community in Denver specifically. Gavin and Kevin tried to get the internet search history evidence that led to their arrest being thrown out under critiques that it was a digital dragnet that threatened people's privacy and their constitutional protections against unreasonable searches and seizures. But the Colorado Supreme Court upheld its use as legal, cautioning that they were not making any broad proclamations on the constitutionality of the search warrants. Instead, it was ruling on the facts of just this one case, which they felt allowed for the use. All 3 pleaded guilty and accepted the prosecution's plea agreements, which is why a trial did not take place. The youngest of the bunch, Dylan Siebert, who was 14 at the time, was sentenced to 3 years in juvenile detention and 7 years in a state prison program for young inmates in 2023. In 2024, Gavin Seymour, who was 19 that year, was sentenced to 40 years in prison after pleading guilty to 1 count of second-degree murder. Finally, Kevin pled guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder. He also faced 60 other charges, including first-degree murder, but they were dropped by prosecutors after recommending that he receive a 60-year sentence. Three months after sentencing, Kevin seemed upbeat about prison life. He said, "When you go to prison, there's a lifeline. I just work out, I chill with some of the guys, we eat together, watch TV, watch sports." He described taking classes on the weekdays for personal growth and emotional intelligence, and even talked about getting into Sex in the City and watching football. What an odd thing to say, given the victims of his crimes' lifelines were cut short by him. May all 5 victims, their families, and their communities here and in Senegal all find ease and relief in their lives and in their pain. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you all for watching.